Welcome, everyone. We are here today live at the beautiful MediaWorks studios. If you haven't been here, check it out. It's amazing. If you have any type of podcast or anything you want to do, this is the place to do it. We love being here. Great staff, friendly customer service, great editor. Everything's awesome here at MediaWorks Studio. Today's episode, if you're a parent and you have a child that's doing any type of social media activity, whatever age range they're at, you are not going to want to miss today's episode. I am here with Ryan Richardson. He is the founder of MediaSafe. And what Ryan does is he speaks about the dangers and potential pitfalls and stuff like that, all to do with the online social media sites and cyberbullying and stuff like that. So you're not going to want to miss this episode. Ryan, thank you for being here today. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
I'm glad to be here.
How's things going?
Again, everything's an adjustment right now with everything that's going on, and I spend more time in the house than I ever have. And that's a good thing, but it's an adjustment.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to stay in touch with my kids. I've got one that's out of town. I've got one that's sort of in town, and then one that lives with us. And so it's a real challenge trying to make sure they're okay and make sure everything's flowing the way it's supposed to.
Well, I'd hoped to get you in a little sooner, to be honest, because the whole world's gone online for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So, but obviously busy schedules and everything. So
I wish I had invested in Zoom.
Yeah,
and in plexiglass.
No doubt about the Lysol stock.
Lysol, absolutely.
Maybe just start. Give us a little. I know you just mentioned about your family there, but maybe give us a little quick bio.
Yeah, my kids are in their 20s now, so I still call them adult children. I don't know if that's the right way to refer to them, and they don't like when I call them that. But they are. One of my goals with my kids in high school, going through high school, was getting them through high school. I can't tell you the sigh of relief I breathed on the night of their last graduation, because it was like, okay, good, they've gotten through this. Mm-hmm. They'll find out the world's much bigger than high school was, because when they were in high school, that was everything. And it's hard enough to go through high school in general, but to go through high school with the state of social media right now, where everybody can comment on everything and that kind of thing. One of the things one of my kids went through was shunning.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason I started doing even talking to parents and talking to schools, was because there were a lot of things that she wasn't invited to, or a couple of things she wasn't invited to, and she wouldn't have known if it wasn't for social media. She could see, hey, my friends are all there and I'm at home.
Right.
Why was I not invited to this thing? And that was a real eye opener for me, that the realization that you have this open window into stuff that you're not invited to. And we found out later there were other reasons why she wasn't invited to it, but she didn't understand that at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing to do. So
yeah, I never even thought about that, actually. That is true. And I've seen that before, even with I'm 44 years old, and I'm seeing my friends at a concert, and I'm like, they didn't call me for that.
Exactly. Yeah. I know I didn't get, as a kid, I didn't get invited to a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
But I didn't find out about it maybe till I was an adult and couldn't care less.
Yeah.
But in high school, there is that element that you're living your life 24/7. And you have this open window to find out that you're not invited to things, which is a hard thing for a kid to process, period.
No. So you mentioned it. Is that what started you off at MediaSafe, or what made you come up with this concept?
I had just started. I looked around and I realized there wasn't anybody else out there. There wasn't talking about things the way I would approach it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I go and talk to schools, and I talk to students, and I talk to them about being careful with their information, being private individuals. And one of the things I do to get them interested, because usually it's like Monday or Tuesday morning, I make a game out of it. So I do a game show. I actually I brought a couple props that I carry with me to the schools.
Where's the Fantastic Father?
It all works out.
They're on order.
They're on order. They're in the mail. They're in the mail. I just blame COVID.
There you go.
Everything. I just blame COVID. So I know that when I go to school on a Monday morning, first of all, it's an assembly, and students are either like still waking up or didn't want to be there. Remember when kids went to school? Oh yeah. Anyway, but I know I've got to make it interesting. So I do this presentation, and I say, oh, by the way, you forgot you're going to wear masks, and so one gets to be Black Panther, one gets to be Iron Man, and so they compete that way. So it gets them into it. It gets these other students into it.
Nice.
So what I do is I bookend my presentations. I do a game show at the beginning that makes them think about what they're doing online, and then I do a game show at the end that makes them think about what they're doing online, and then I talk to them in between about coming from my background as a lawyer. How important, how careful you want to be with your information. Also, how careful you want to be if you ever want to get a job one day, because in the last 7 years, I've seen so many posts, not just from students, from adults too, that where they've posted things and it's either gotten them fired or gotten them thrown in jail. Like when I first started, I used to get like 1 or 2 stories a week, and now I get like 7 a day. There were just a couple in the last couple of days where people have been kicked off, like Jessica Maroney got lost her show yesterday because of things that she did online. So
yeah, it's like your main focus is getting into the schools and teaching kids, but I mean, there's plenty of parents that don't understand this stuff either.
I always say, like, when I'm doing a presentation with parents, I understand that I'm going to say things that they've done or they're doing, and I try to approach it in a way that's not like, don't be stupid, like, don't do that. Like, I don't assume I know these people. I try to because there was another speaker I saw once that his whole position was to tell parents that they weren't doing a good job if their kids were in trouble online. And I'm like, these are strangers. I'm not going to tell. You're a bad parent, by the way. It's not my approach. My approach is let's make it fun. Let's make it interesting, and then help you to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. But
so what's the earliest age, or what do you find is when kids start to get on social media and all that? What kind of grade level's that?
When I first started, I did only grade 5 and up. So I would go grade 5 to grade 12. And I would do different, and I had a different presentation for each age group, because 5 to say 6 are dealing with one thing. 7 to 8, you can talk about a little bit more, and then 9 to 12, they've been online since they were born, so it's not that you can talk about pretty much everything.
Right.
But then I started getting asked to talk to K to 3. So over the last 5 years, I'll go in and talk to a K to 3 group, which is the hardest one for me to do, because all you're trying to do is tell them that the world's a bad place.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's like I use a lot of cartoons. I use a lot of things that will, if you're approached by somebody online, trust your parents, trust somebody you can talk to. It's really short. And that's really the heart of it is if there's a stranger that approaches you online and it starts asking you questions about, shut it down and go find somebody and let them know. Sure. But there's not really much more I can tell, because you still want the kids to believe that the world is good and there aren't predators out there.
Fine line.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always a challenge. Of all the presentations I do, that's the most challenging.
Yeah, and then as you go up the higher grades, you kind of do you point out specific sites and actual problems with those sites, or do you?
I don't, only because like when I'm talking to parents, I say just stay in touch with your kid. One of the things we really push is keeping the communication open with your kids at every age, because then you'll know or have some clue as to what they're involved with. Or, some kids' Instagram is everything. Other kids don't have a presence on Instagram at all. Right. So there's no point in going after one, if your kid's not involved in it. But the only way you're going to know that is by keeping that communication going with the kids and trying to understand what they're into.
Are the parents sometimes shocked by what you say? Like, do they, I mean, everyone's got a somewhat of an awareness of the dangers of social media, but I think better than most, like what can actually happen, like the identity theft for the adults.
Right.
Yeah. I'm assuming cyberbullying would be a huge topic.
Cyberbullying is huge, because it's not like at the end of the day it ends, because it can go on. It can, what I call it a real enhancer, drama enhancer sometimes. And again, my approach isn't to be negative about social media. It's not like it's all bad. It's going to ruin us like rock and roll and we'll never be the same. It's just a fad, right?
Sorry.
That's what they said about rock and roll. They're like, it won't last and it will move on. Isn't the case. It's still here.
No.
As it should be.
Very much for us. We share a love of rock and roll, as a matter of fact.
Hey, I've got Foo Fighters tickets for October. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm still a little bit hopeful.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Hopefully myself. I get Ticketmaster owes me about $1,200 in refunds right now. So
I just got a confirmation today on ours.
Nice.
So, yeah. So anyway, social media itself can be a drama enhancer, because you can have let's say 2 kids fight at school, and like when we were kids, you'd take sides. One, you'd take your friend's side, the other people would take their friend's side, and at the end of the day, that fight would be over, and you'd move on, and it would never come back. Right. Well, social media can keep that fight going for weeks and weeks and weeks, and help. If people want to be vindictive, they can really be nasty. Oh, yeah. Online.
Especially if they get a hold of like obviously a picture or something like that. Yeah. That can forever haunt you.
Yeah. There's a new show. Speaking of heroes, on the CW just launched this show called Stargirl, Luke Wilson's in it. It's really good. It's part of The Flash and all those
Mhm.
shows. And they did an episode last week about where this girl was dating a guy, and he was like, "Come on, just send me a photo. Just send me a photo." And she's like, "Well, I trust this guy, so it's
Yeah.
probably not the smartest thing to do, but he's surely not going to leak this to the rest of the school." And it goes through this one episode, goes through what she went through and how ostracized and how cut off she was,
Mhm.
because obviously the picture went out and everybody saw it, and she was like running for school council, and then the picture came out at the same time. But it
Mhm.
was a really good portrayal of how quickly information gets out and
Mhm.
how quickly a life can be either temporarily destroyed or
Right.
permanently.
Well, I mean, worst case scenario, you've heard of kids committing
Absolutely.
suicide over or being bullied,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
all that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
is there like can the person doing the act of bullying, can there is there any potential legal
Yes.
ramifications
There
towards
are,
them?
yeah,
Yeah.
there are people that are sitting in jail because there are people that are sitting in jail because their kids did something. Like
Right.
there are
That's why I was
people
going to
that are,
ask that too. Can this affect the parents of
yeah,
the person doing the act?
yeah,
You know?
it's extreme, but there are people sitting in jail because they weren't monitoring or keeping track of their kids,
Hmm.
and they were held legally responsible. And of course, there's kids that have been tried as adults, and
Right.
but yeah, it's so traceable, right?
Hmm.
Like it's really hard to hide when you've harassed somebody into either harming themselves or killing themselves.
Right.
But yeah, that's a real issue for sure.
My daughter, she's only 6, so we don't have any issues with this
Right,
at
right.
the moment. But well, technically, I'll ask you about this. I'll jump to this question. I did hear, I think it was probably almost a year ago now, but there was, I can't remember the was it an app or a video or something, but supposedly this super scary image popped up and
The
kind of freaked the kids out.
was it the
I don't know, was
Momo
yeah, was that
the Momo
a
challenge?
is
Yeah.
that a was that a real was that a fact check? Like, is that real? Did that happen? Or
You know what's
because
funny is
it
that
got some a lot of attention.
it didn't even matter whether it was real or not because it
Yeah,
scared so many people, and it popped up on people's video and that kind of stuff.
right.
Whether the origin of it was actually true really didn't matter after a couple
Hmm.
days, because all of a sudden you had kids that were worried about seeing this thing, and if they
Right.
hadn't seen it, they had heard about it.
Hmm.
uh, and yeah, that stuff, it moves so fast,
Yeah.
and by the time you could actually track somebody down to do it, there's another one that's taking its place, right?
Yeah, well, the technology, well, yeah, and something else always pops up, and or new technology pops up, or a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
app or something. It's never. I don't think you're ever gonna not have a career with what you've started
Sure.
here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It really is. Like right now, Zoom. Everybody's loving Zoom,
right.
but they've had to increase the security. I've used Zoom in the last couple of weeks, but I'm still very careful about the security challenges, because there have been what they call Zoom bombing, where people have jumped into the meeting and shown all kinds of stuff.
Oh
Like,
wow,
yeah, it's brutal.
it's never gonna end.
Yeah. So if you're having a Zoom meeting, don't tweet out or don't message out publicly that people can see where the meeting is and what time it
Yeah,
starts. So
yeah. I noticed most people do the invites through email.
yeah.
Um, and back to the schools.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
do you feel this is one of the things that I'm concerned of now, but it hasn't really happened. But like, do you think the schools are doing enough to prevent the cyberbullying, and or not even or even bullying at the school as well?
Yeah,
But,
yeah. It's really interesting, and then this is a weird year to talk about it because
yeah,
kids are at home. Like
right.
it's weird. It's a different situation. But in a normal year, it is a very fine line, because a lot of stuff doesn't happen in school, right? And even if it does happen in school, those teachers won't know about it until maybe weeks later or months
Right.
later.
Yeah.
And trying to track it down weeks later is so hard, and then try to figure out who you're going to punish. So it's very blurry, because a lot of stuff doesn't happen on school grounds,
Hmm.
right? And then even if it does happen on school grounds, you got to be able to prove it's on school grounds, and then there's legal liability and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. So it's not easy to prove
Right.
on
For
any
sure.
stretch. Yeah. Yeah.
What advice like would you for a kid that's being bullied,
Mhm. Yeah.
cyberbullied? What advice do you have for them?
Find an adult that you trust,
Hmm.
that you can tell what's going on. Like
Mhm.
that's the most basic piece of advice I could give,
Mhm.
is if it's an aunt, if it's a cousin, if it's an uncle, whatever, grandparent, find somebody that you can say, hey, this is what's going on. Because a lot of kids in general don't want to share that information, or they feel like I shouldn't be having to deal with this,
Right.
or that kind of thing. And the hardest thing, and really we found it even during this time, is that when people feel alone,
Mhm.
you're not thinking clearly. So if you feel like you're alone, like my daughter was, where she was feeling like she wasn't part of things and being invited to things, it took a lot to get her to talk about it.
Mhm.
And if anything, it's kind of, as parents, watch for the signs
Mhm.
and encourage your kids to talk about it when they're ready.
That's what I was going to say. So what would you, for the parents, what do you hope that when they, if they finally hopefully get told about this,
Right. Yeah.
what are you hoping that they say in return to try to, ease that child's mind?
I tell parents, and I've learned this myself. Like this is a big deal. I tell parents, you got to be shock proof.
Mhm.
You've got to anticipate the worst.
Mhm.
So if you're looking at something and you see something where your kid is like gone online and just sworn at everybody and like cussed everybody out, the last thing you want to do is go in and just gangbusters and just, you're busted, you're grounded, you're this,
Right.
you're that. I always say, yeah, discipline, but do it in a way that it's not your first response. Like your first response is to because I remember at each point in my kids' lives, when they were teenagers, they came to me and said, I got to tell you something. And I literally would brace myself, because it was like, if I blow up
Yeah.
at whatever they say, they're never going to tell me anything again.
That's a very good point.
So I'm not going to take that approach. And even as adults, the same thing. I'm kind of ready for everything.
Mhm.
And most of the time, it's not as bad as I've built it up to be. But like I said, I would say, oh, my kid wouldn't. They wouldn't
Right.
say that to somebody online. And then I would read it and go, oh yeah, my kid would do that.
Yeah.
It's you're in the moment. You feel like only your friends are going to see it.
Yeah.
And that's just
Well,
not the
we
case.
can't be there 24/7 as
Right.
much as we wish
Yeah.
we could.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah, walking around with a pillow behind your kids,
Right.
it'd be nice, but
Yeah.
that's not realistic. You've
Well,
got to make sure the communication's open so that they can make decisions when the time comes. Right.
Yeah, and chances are they've probably been experiencing whatever they just told you is
Yeah.
probably like by the time they worked up the courage to tell you, they've probably been dealing with it for a while already, and then
Yeah.
you don't want to come down on them, make it worse, and
Yeah.
something like that.
The,
So,
the best thing you can do, again, just from my experience and from talking to other parents, the best thing you can do is say, you can tell me anything.
Mhm.
When you're ready, you can tell me anything. I had a parent and a kid walk up after a presentation, and the mom says, do you want to tell him? And the daughter said, yeah. And she said, when I got my license, I took my kid phone and took a really close up picture of my license, and I posted it on Instagram. And fortunately, the mom didn't immediately, because the mom saw it almost immediately, and she didn't go in and shame her online in front of her friends, right?
Mhm.
And go, that's a stupid thing to do. Why would you put that? That's got all your
Right.
hair color, eye color, registration, all that kind of stuff.
right.
And the mom called her directly and said, do you think that was a good idea? And said it in a way that wasn't like, you idiot, but she just asked, like, and the girl immediately said, oh my gosh, it's got all my information. I better take
Put it
that
out in the
down.
world. Yeah.
So she took it down right away.
Mhm.
And I said to the mom, there were like 75 ways you could have handled it that would have created a whole bunch of problems between the two of you. You could have, treated her like she was stupid, but you chose not to attack and just say, hey, we all make mistakes. What do we got to do to fix this?
I think empathy goes the best. That's the best way to do it for me. I try not to blow up or anything like that. Like you mentioned earlier, you want your kids to feel like they can tell you anything,
Yeah.
and you want that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to spoil that.
There were a lot of times when my kids would tell me stuff, and then I'd go for a drive, and I would
Mhm.
just drive around and I'd scream, but I wouldn't do it in front of them. It was just
Yeah.
like, what?
You
Are
gotta do what you
kidding?
gotta do.
But yeah, it was like I didn't want my first reaction to be something that was going to hurt our relationship,
Right.
right? Because if they're like you said, if they're telling you something, then it's probably been building up for a long time.
Mhm. So I think we could discuss it. There's probably tons of things I'm missing.
Sure.
So is there anything that you want to get out there that maybe I haven't asked? I mean, it's such an important subject. I've seen Ryan speak. I highly, highly advise seeing him. It's so informative. Every kid, every parent should hear
Thanks.
a presentation or a seminar by Ryan and talk to them. Is there anything I missed today?
It's you can find me at bmediasafe.com, and we've got a presence on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook.
Mhm.
The resource for parents is really good on Facebook, because we do update with new information, news stories, things to be aware of, like the Momo Challenge. Was that a year and a half ago?
Mhm.
We posted information about that so people could get the real story on
Mhm.
what was going on. So yeah, we were always trying to stay in touch with our clients, trying to stay in touch with the schools,
Mhm.
and be a resource. And it's interesting now, because with everything that's gone on here, it's caused me to rethink how I do the presentations
Mm-hmm.
and how I'm going to be able to deliver them, whenever school gets back in. But it's going to definitely change my focus for sure.
So you do public speaking?
Yep.
You do obviously in the schools.
Yep.
Do you do like one-on-one type settings as
I
well?
do some one-on-one. I've had parents that hired me to help them kind of work with their family on social media boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hired by companies to create social media policies, because the interesting thing too is that because everybody's got a phone, right? Sometimes people say the first thing that pops into their head. And there have been so many situations where people have gotten fired from jobs because you represent the company. And so if you say something that's homophobic or racist or any number of things, the company will immediately back off from you. Mm-hmm. One of the key was there was a guy that worked for I think Ontario Energy, and he had a $120,000 job, and it was something he said on camera got him fired. It happened on Saturday, and he didn't have a job by Monday. So the realization is that I'd like to say only kids do this kind of stuff, but you represent your company 24/7, and that's changed since in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and then it doesn't even have to be something fairly recent. It can go back. It can be something you said a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Even
Jimmy Fallon's apologizing for something he did 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of danger out there. Like, we could talk about this all afternoon. Like I said, there's so much out there to learn, and I'm super happy that you're doing what you're doing, and the kids are getting some valuable knowledge, and the parents as well from you. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You also teach at St. Clair College. What are you doing there?
I do. I teach right now. I'm teaching everything online. I started a new course on Monday for customer service, but I teach everything from customer service to business law, employment law, ethics. I work for about 5 different departments, and I think I'm up to like 17 different courses that I teach, most of which I create and do myself. And
so that's why it's so hard to get a hold of you.
Oh man, trying to figure out how to teach online has been a real challenge.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my wife's a teacher too, so she actually has had to do this for the last 2 months. So she's been a real help as far as figuring out how to get people engaged when they're sitting at home or when their kids are right next to them, because I teach a lot of adults.
Yeah, I just interviewed a teacher just before a couple of days ago that's going to be airing that, and it's all about what's going on with online teaching and all that right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go. We kind of did this backwards. I'm as you can see, there's so much. You have so much information. I got a lot of notes here.
I can run my mouth. That's
but
for sure.
I was going to talk about kind of how we met and all that in the beginning, but we kind of got going on that topic, and I didn't want to slow it down. But so we first met at Connections Early Years Family Center, where they have monthly meetings for a committee called the Dads Matter Steering Committee that Ryan and I both sit on. Yeah. So you've been on the committee longer, so I would like for you to kind of just describe people what that committee is and what it's all about.
Yeah, I found out about it. My daughter had a doctor's appointment, and there was a sign or just a leaflet on the doctor's wall or the bulletin board that said that there was this conference coming up, Dads Matter, and I'd never seen those words together, Dads Matter, and I was curious. So I started asking some questions about it. I took a picture of the flyer and made sure I was going to be free to go to this conference. And in the meantime, I was doing a contract with St. Clair, and it was through the City of Windsor. And the City of Windsor is one of the many partners of the Dads Matter Steering Committee. And I talked to, and it's so funny because in all the years that I've taught for the city, very rarely does somebody from the city come to one of my classes and sit in. But 2 weeks before the conference, this person came in and was sitting in the class. And I said, hey, by the way, I've heard about this Dads Matter conference. Do you know? She said, yeah, I know something, but I'll put you in touch with the person that in our office is involved. So I got in touch with them. And again, it never happened, but it happened that way. It was meant to be. And I was asked if I wanted to come sit in on the steering committee meeting. And then I was asked to see if I would join. So
awesome.
It's been really good. Yeah.
No, I love the agencies that are involved in that.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I know we've been around for a couple of years now, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface of what we can actually accomplish.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned the City of Windsor, and every June, we're fortunate enough to get the mayor to proclaim June as Dads Matters Month in the City of Windsor. So maybe you can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, we are in Dads Matter Month right now. We just coordinated some of our social media messaging. So we launched a contest today, and we're going to do the giveaway on Father's Day. And it's really cool just having a month where we declare dads matter and really putting the focus. And that one of the things you and I talked about regularly is keeping the focus on encouraging dads that are either struggling or trying to figure out how to do this or how to change diapers or how to relate to their kids, which really ties in with what I do anyway, how to relate to your kids when it comes to social media. So it's all we try to do is educate the community on how to support dads. And if we support dads, it benefits the entire family. Whether dad's with mom or not, we can be better parents or better co-parents, but we need help.
Right. It's not, that's, I always, there's no competition. Like it's not a competition between moms and dads. Same with my fantastic fathers. We love the moms. We're a full family group, but you know, if dad needs some help, mom needs some help, whatever that is, whatever, if they're gaining knowledge or bringing something into that home, it's just better off for every member of that family. So
see, I enjoy what I do now and going and speaking to schools and speaking to parents and students, but I used to practice family law. And I could only do that for so long. It wore on me. By my third Christmas of custody access hearings, I was like, I can't do this one more time. And partially because the system itself has been designed to be so adversarial. And it really wears on you, whether people want to admit it or not. People that are even practicing family law, it wears on you over time. And so I like some of the innovations that have been happening with mediation, with those kind of things. So it's not one against the other. It's the idea of the reason I stopped doing family law is one of the judges said to my client and to the client of the other lawyer, she looked at both of them and she said, it's going to cost you about $30,000 each, which you probably don't have. And she just kind of broke it down and she said, stop acting like children and grow up and just deal with this. And then I was literally like, yeah, that's my last.
You know what? That's a whole nother episode. One I hope to do soon, actually. But court wasn't designed originally to be fighting over children. Court is property and theft and bodily harm. That's what the legal system was designed for, not to tear a child from one home and put it in the other. It's just not what it was. So. Again, a whole nother episode. I look forward to doing that someday. How did I get so lucky? Brian is also a committee member on Fantastic Fathers. I am. How did I get so proud? I'm a proud. How did I get so lucky to have you on my committee here?
Well, it was when you asked. The timing was just right. I had actually let go of some of the other stuff I was doing. I always try to take inventory of what I'm doing and if I'm doing it well. And so I used to be a person that would commit to 30 things, and I'd be like somewhat involved in this, somewhat involved in that, and maturity. I don't think I'm mature, but some maturities come in, and probably about 15 years ago, I decided, no, I'm going to scale down what I'm doing, and I'm going to do 3 things really well. If I'm going to be on 3 committees, I'm going to be really good at them, as opposed to being half committed to a whole bunch of different ones. So that has been a good lesson to me, but it also forces me to say, okay, if you're going to pick up this one, what are you going to let go? And it was just the right timing where I'd actually stepped down from another committee, and you asked me to be involved. And I was already excited about what was going on and seeing the Father's Day event and some of the really cool, innovative stuff, workshops that are available for dads that, learning how to do your kid's hair. I could have benefited from that years ago. Because I was terrible at
and
doing
yourself, you would have had some.
Oh my, yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw that in
This takes hours. When I knew I was going to be here today,
I'm COVIDed up here right now, so excuse me. I like that. I want to start wearing a hat for these. I think
COVIDed up. I like that. Let's just make it a verb.
Yeah.
No, when I knew I was coming here today, I started about 8 this morning trying to get my hair just right. It's a lot of work.
So Father's Day is coming up.
It is,
and I know obviously. Going to probably be a little bit of a sad day. Would definitely be a sad day for you, but if you care to touch on that, feel free. If not, I would like to know, what are some of the things that your dad passed on to you that you were able to pass on to your kids?
My dad could start a conversation with anybody at any time, anywhere. I remember being traveling down to Florida once, and my dad just started, like, literally just leaned over and started talking to this family next to us.
Mhm.
And like by the end of the conversation, my dad was still in touch with them almost till he passed away.
Yeah.
That's just who he was. And so
Nice.
he really, one of the things I learned from him was uh, conversation so important. Like, especially with the way the world is right now,
Mhm.
the only way to start to resolve some of the problems is by sitting down at a table and having a conversation about what we can do to make things better. And so I inherited that from him,
Excellent.
the ability to just have conversations with people. And I used to go to conferences a lot, and there's a lot of schmoozing that goes on where people don't have any real conversations. They're just like, hi, how you doing? But they're looking to see who's more important than
Right.
you and that kind of stuff. And I learned how to stop doing that kind of stuff and have
Mhm.
real conversations. So one of the things that I've benefited from, especially during this lockdown, is that I took that and made it into a podcast. So it's called People in Your Neighborhood, and it's my excuse for getting back in touch with people that I shouldn't have lost touch with.
That's a great idea. I
So
love it.
you have an hour conversation with people. We're all caught up, and
Mhm.
it's recorded and it's put out there.
It's great.
And I did this thing.
Where do we find that?
It's peopleinyourneighborhood.com.
Nice.
But it's great because what I realized is that everybody's home, and so are bands that haven't been together for years. So I started doing these band reunions,
Mhm.
and I got a band from BC to reunite. It was like therapy. Like they
Nice.
were like, "Oh, I missed you so much." Like it's
Nice.
But a lot of things that have come up, the reason I brought up the People in Your Neighborhood podcast is that a lot of the people that I've talked to that I used to work with in bands and stuff, they're dads now. And so they have really, one band starts talking about how they're trying to explain to their kid, like, I toured for 3 years. And the kids are like, you didn't. That
Right.
didn't happen.
You're not cool.
But then, I talked to another guy yesterday. He said he was a hip hop guy in California, and he said his son would come home from school with a list of questions from his friends' parents saying, "Hey, I know who your dad is, and he toured and all this kind of stuff." So
Right.
he said it made him cool in his son's eyes
Nice.
to hear it from other people, right?
Exactly.
Because he could have told him forever, and he'd been like,
Yeah.
you never did that."
Right.
But so I got all these stories on my podcast of people that weren't dads when I met them, and now they're
Mhm.
dads, and they're talking about how most of them have said, the musicians have said, my kid's far better than I was at that age, like
Right.
the age that I was out there.
Cool.
They're writing their own music, they're doing their own things. So you're getting all these stories of the next generation. But what this has taught a lot of the people I talk to too is it's time to reconnect with your family,
Mhm.
right? Like it's like everybody's slowed down.
Back to the basics.
Yeah, everybody's slowed down. It's like this is your opportunity to connect.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with a friend of mine. I was worried about him, to be honest, because he was working managing 3 different locations, and he was never home. And he told me this last year, and he said one of the best things that could have come out of the silver lining to come out of this is that he's reconnected with his daughters.
Yep.
And they're glad that he's home, and
It's
he's
bonus time. I keep
Yeah.
saying that in the last 3 podcasts that I've done is
Yeah.
this is bonus time and make the best of it.
take advantage of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. The easiest way to find out about the contest for Father's Day, which I'm excited about, is coming up. The easiest way to find out and enter the contest, we want you to share your stories of where you did something right in raising your kids, whether your kids are adults now or whether they're young now.
Mhm.
But we want people to share their stories of a moment or something you did that you feel like made a good call. Like if I was entering, I would say taking my kids to concerts when they were old enough was a smart move in the long run, because my kids are all into music in different ways.
Nice.
But they have all these experiences of being backstage and doing that kind of stuff that they still talk about. We went to see Biff Naked,
Yep.
singer.
Yep.
My kids, I interviewed her when my kids were really young, so I played her stuff around the house a lot. And when she did a show, acoustic show in London, my kids my 2 kids wanted to go because they knew her stuff from
Nice.
back then. And with the 3 of us went, and we had a blast.
Great.
So yeah, it's
Yep.
that shared experience you can have. Like those are the things I remember, especially on a Father's Day when I may not see all 3 of my kids.
Right.
I have those memories and those stories that I can share with them in the photos from the event and that kind of stuff.
So that's on the Dads Matter Windsor Essex Facebook page.
The Dads Matter Windsor Essex Facebook page, you can enter and share those stories.
Cool.
But don't use my Biff Naked story.
I'll share that as well on our
Yes.
page. This is the last question I have for you.
Yeah.
I ask this of every guest.
Okay.
So your kids are grown. So normally I have to say fast forward into the future, but
Yeah,
we're, again, with Father's Day coming up and whatever. And I know that you're a proud father. So let's say your kids stumble across this interview, which
Okay.
I'm sure they will.
Right? Yep.
Take a moment and maybe just give a heartfelt message. What do you want your kids to know?
I couldn't be more proud of you. I couldn't be more proud of the people that you are, the people that you're becoming, the decisions that you're making, and the lessons that you're learning from some of the decisions that you're making. Uh, because we're in this for the long haul, and just like anything, there's nothing that you can surprise me with, and I'll always be on your side
Awesome.
as you start to try to figure these things out. So kind of the same message that we kind of worked on when they were teenagers carries through to
Still
adults.
applies.
And you'll always be my kids, and you can always come to me.
There you have
That's
it.
the message for my kids.
That's great. Well, I'm sure I'll talk to you before, but if not, you have a happy Father's Day.
You too.
Thank you very much for being here today. Again, your message is so important. If anyone needs to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Be Media Safe through our Facebook page. There's any number of people in your neighborhood.com. Any one of those ways I respond. And sometimes I have people just ask me questions about media and about how to make decisions with their kids and which sites we should be concerned about. And I respond to all those.
Great.
So, absolutely.
Okay, everyone, we're
Thank
going to
you.
leave it at that. If anyone out there wants to be a guest on the show, feel free to send us an email, info@fantasticfathers.ca, or hit us up on our Facebook page, Fantastic Fathers. And thanks again, Ryan, for being here today.
Absolutely.
Everyone have a wonderful day out there. Take care.